I never thought in my life that a monolithic corporation with near monopoly status, market share, in a highly competitive field would be capable of consistently pumping out such hot garbage one pile after another. I'm of course talking about Microsoft. Now, my relationship with old Conspiracorp wasn't always so wrought with disappointment. I grew up with Windows, have reserved all my console affiliations to Xbox, and I do thoroughly enjoy GamePass. That being said, besides those few mentions, which, let's be honest, are all broken in their own way, all their other products and services make a cup of bleach look pretty enticing. First of all, let's be clear, I don't really buy into the conspiracies around Microsoft and specifically Bill Gates, but I do find them highly entertaining. My complaints more revolve around Microsoft's products and services that they offer, so let's get into why Microsoft sucks. Starting with Windows, let's take a look at what Windows market share is in regards to operating systems. A whopping 76.56% in December of 2020. It's clear that by a severely significant figure, Microsoft utterly dominates the market, and Apple trails behind nearly 60% with their OS X. And of course, as has always been the case, Linux comes in at 70+% less than Windows. This division in the market acts as a complete detriment to consumers as it restricts our choices for software and applications, and in subtle ways forces us to use Windows whether we want to or not. I suppose this is the benefit of private enterprise. Because Linux is open source and relatively more difficult to use than Windows or OS X, it's cast into obscurity and reserved for those who have the skills or compulsion to control their PC experience. But because of the division of the market, even those who use Linux are still pushed to use Windows in their workflow, as many apps do not have a Linux counterpart. And while basically all tasks in Windows can be completed in Linux, it's often a more lengthy and involved process, again, subtly persuading those to just make the switch to Windows. Windows in most ways is a lot more user-friendly of an OS than any alternative besides Mac OS X, which is the reason Apple holds second place in the industry. However, it is from this ease of use that consumers develop complacency and further indebt themselves and their data to Microsoft. The telemetry embedded within Windows constantly communicates back to home base, and all information is stored within Microsoft servers. This telemetry is also enabled by default, and while there are some switches to disable some telemetry services, unless operating an enterprise version of Windows, there is no way to completely remove it. This telemetry data includes your complete rig information, your browser behavior, some keystrokes, applications installed and used, and so much more. Now, Microsoft signals that they don't need to use any of this data to track or snoop individuals, but the data collected does have the capability to do so. But trust Microsoft, they care so much about you and have all your best interests in mind. Of course, this is total BS, and by publicly stating they have the ability, but they don't track anyone, as already shady as hell, and certainly doesn't instill any confidence in me. What, your Gatesian ethics stepped in the way of your business? Come on. Don't for a second believe that those who have your data don't use it in ways to benefit their bottom line. The saving grace with Microsoft is that while they collect your data in ways akin to Facebook or Google, likely due to their size and scope within the industry, they suck at it. While this next point may be anecdotal, quick browses on the internet indicate that it's not, and it drives me to the depths of insanity. That problem is the USB driver problem. My bloody peripherals disconnect randomly all the time, and while this is usually far and few between, with my luck it seems to happen when I need them. I mean, when don't you need a mouse? Thanks Microsoft, I was clicking through YouTube, but after, I guess I'll just go to a keyboard shortcut. You goose. Furthermore, the operating system often hangs on the post screen until you unplug a specific, but unknown to you, USB. It's an issue I've never experienced with Linux, or even OS X for that matter, unless my device was broken, and it seemingly originates with Windows, and I've tried many USB externals across many different manufacturers. My last complaint about Windows, even though I could go on forever about it, is the dreaded boot loop. I've honestly lost track of how many loops I've succumbed to. When you're stuck in a boot loop, the Windows logo loading screen just loops and doesn't load anything. Upon 3 unsuccessful boots, you're forced into the Windows recovery tools, and I've never had any luck with them, and it's always failed to rectify my problems. I've seriously lost track of how many times I've had to reinstall Windows because some Windows update bricked my boot. The madness drove me to, at first, always have a Windows boot device for reinstalling, and after that worked so many times, I had to start backing up images of my install to recover to. While this is a good practice to adapt to and habit, it's pretty annoying, and the fact that most have to do it for the reason of Microsoft's tendency to break their own software is astoundingly hilarious. Well, inconvenient. While my descent into gamerdom began with PC, my console experiences began with Xbox. I did have a Nintendo 64 before, but I still mostly gamed on my PC, and it wasn't until the Xbox came along that I made the switch to consoles, and honestly, I commend Microsoft for the original Xbox. It's a truly awesome piece of hardware, especially for the time, and more on that in another video. But what the Xbox ecosystem has become in the years since the 360 is a shadow of its former self. We actually just witnessed a glimpse of Microsoft's fumbling over Xbox with their decision, and quick 180, to double the price of Microsoft Xbox Live Gold membership. It was like Microsoft was performing the world's first speedrun of corporate rejection. Paying for something that you already have because you already pay for it is greedy as all hell, and it's been the mantra of Xbox Live since its inception. And while upon its initial release in a still experimental state, I could understand a subscription fee, but at this point it's become a relic that continues to siphon money from gamers' pockets, and Xbox remains the only gaming platform that forces users who want to play online to pay their stupid sub. With all this being said about the subscription fee, I would still make the argument that the influx of capital it draws has allowed Microsoft to make Xbox Live a stable and fast experience online, especially in the early days. My experience with Nintendo's Online or PlayStation Network pales in comparison to the Xbox Live experience. But the real counter is from PC, where since the dawn of the internet, we pay our ISPs and we get to play the games that we want, with the exception of games as a service, of course, like World of Warcraft or its early competitors. It's beyond astounding, and it's why I mostly reserve my gaming to PC. The GamePass service sprung onto the gaming scene in 2017 and has since done a stellar job at curating and providing new content, up to over 100 games, to their subscribing base. The service initially only provided games for Xbox, but in June 2019 it expanded its offerings into PC. Game Pass is actually quite awesome on the Xbox, but when you move over to the PC, it becomes a whole different nightmare. The experience on Windows using Microsoft's abysmal Game Pass app is actually what prompted me to make this video. Given that Windows is Microsoft's bread and butter, one would think that they would streamline the experience to work seamlessly on Windows, but of course they completely bungled it and released a broken piece of software that continues to remain broken despite constant updating and reformatting. First of all, the Xbox Service Suite for the PC is broken as a whole. I consistently have trouble joining parties, chatting, and using GameBar. If you change your account information for Xbox Live, all of the old information is still stored on the registry, so after changing my information a couple times, every time I had to dig through the registry, remove the old information, and throw in a restart for good measure. The next issue is the catalog itself. It seems that Microsoft is licensing these games for the Xbox, and for the most part, the variant that gets released for the PC on Game Pass is an abysmal port. If this isn't the case, it's a piss-poor excuse for a launcher that is the Game Pass app. The other problem I see with the catalog, and before I see comments about it, I get it, confirmation bias, but the other issue is the library is overpopulated with platformers. While this may not be a problem, it certainly affects the quality and scope of their offerings, and they need to broaden what their library consists of. Quality is among the primary driving forces of a product or service. While the products and services Microsoft offer look nice and provide ease of use, I thoroughly believe their quality is suffering. Their revenue continues to increase while they slash jobs left and right every other fiscal year. I can't fault them for reevaluating their business, but I can't help but think that a lot of these jobs they've removed were providing a level of quality to their products they were clearly unaware of or they cared little about. Microsoft takes our data through telemetry services, but refuses to take into consideration our critiques of their products and services that we bought, paid for, and use all the time. My problems seem to mostly stem from Windows, but there is a constant of subpar performance across Microsoft's offerings. Save for obviously egregious missteps like the recent doubling of Xbox Live's price, Microsoft exhibits a level of self-awareness and respect for their consumers that should reflect catastrophically on their business. But because of the sheep among us, they continue to remain one of the most dominant forces in big tech. So Windows can go to hell. I'll be using it through a VM in the future and only when I need it. Peace out, and I'll see you next time.